I was walking toward the playground when I heard someone calling my name. "Robbie, over here!" I turned and found my friend Andrew standing in the swampland that bordered our neighborhood. "Come here," he frantically motioned. "I need your help." "My mom doesn't like me going into the swamp. She says it's polluted," was my reply. "The last time she caught me, she took away all of my electronics for a week." "Please," Andrew begged. "Julian is stuck and I need help getting him out." Julian was another one of the kids who lived in our neighborhood. I didn't play with him very often because he was always wanting to do things my parents didn't want me to do, like go into the swamp. "Stuck where?" I asked. Andrew pointed behind him. "Right over there." If he was pointing at Julian, I couldn't see him. There were too many trees in the way. "Hold on." I looked back toward my house to make sure neither of my parents or anyone else who might tattle on me was outside. When I didn't see anyone, I quickly ran down the embankment and joined Andrew. I liked going into the swamp and figured this was the perfect excuse to get away with it if I did get caught. One of my friends was in trouble. How could my mom get mad at me for helping him? "He's over there," Andrew pointed to where Julian was standing ankle-deep in mud. Andrew and I approached Julian, stopping at the edge of a mossy embankment outside of the muddy area where our friend was standing. "Give me your hand." I reached out to Julian, but he didn't reach back. "What's wrong with him?" I asked Andrew. Andrew shrugged. "He hasn't moved or said a word since he fell in the mud." "That's weird." "Just grab his arm and help me pull him out," Andrew said. "Okay," I replied, leaning forward and grabbing hold of Julian's left arm while Andrew grabbed his right arm. "Ready?" Andrew asked. I nodded. The two of us pulled as hard as we could, falling back in the process, but we did manage to pull Julian out of the mud. As soon as he was free, he got to his feet and stood over us with a blank look on his mud-covered face. "You okay?" I asked. He didn't answer me. Instead, he opened his mouth and vomited forth a stream of mud. I managed to roll out of the way, but Andrew wasn't as quick as I was. The muddy vomit covered him from head to toe. "What the fuck?" Andrew shot to his feet, spitting mud out of his mouth. A moment later, a blank look came over his face and he stopped moving. "Andrew?" I called out. Andrew and Julian turned their blank faces towards me and opened their mouths. I took off running before the mud that started spewing from their mouths could reach me. The internet is so useful. You can find anything. I found the largest piñata I could for my daughter's 9th birthday. It's huge. So many goodies stuffed inside. She was so surprised when I picked her up. "Does Daddy know that you picked me up?" "Of course he does. Daddy said I couldn't see you anymore." "Well, honey, we're doing much better now. We wanted to surprise you for your birthday." She was so excited when we got to the park, and family and friends were there. I made sure everyone came. "Where's Daddy?" "He'll be along very shortly, promise." Everyone was so surprised to hear that Joe and I were getting back together. No one asks about the restraining order that he has on me. I know they want to. I can hear the disgust in their voices at the prospect of us getting back together. None of them want that to happen, but they can't say that in front of all the kids. They keep asking me where Joe is. I tell them that he's on his way. Some of them get on their phones. They think I can't see. The kids stare at the giant piñata dangling from the thick rope. I tell them that they have to wait to give it a whack. Everyone has some cake, and my daughter starts opening presents when Joe drives up and runs over. He tries not to make a scene, even though I know that he wants to. "What the hell are you doing?" He says it quietly, but some of the family hears it. "It's her birthday. I have a restraining order. You can't be around her. She's my daughter." "Angela. Where is Mrs. Stein?" "Who's that?" "Her babysitter. I gave her the day off." Joe looks at our family. He looks at the kids waiting patiently to hit that piñata. He's always been a pushover. He doesn't want a scene. I let him off the hook. "Look, I'll go. Don't cheat her out of her birthday. I went through all this trouble for everyone to be here and for her to have a fun day in the park. Don't disappoint her. I'll go." As I turn, I see all the disapproving looks of our family. Even my own side picked him over me. My own daughter doesn't even really want me here. I need to leave. I walk back to my car and stare across the park. He's going to let her have the rest of her party. They're getting ready to hit the piñata. I'd love to stay and watch, but I can't. Mrs. Stein is in the trunk, and I have to bury her before she starts to stink. I drive away. I've just crossed the street when I hear the blast. The internet is so useful. You can learn anything. Explosives are far easier to build than you think. You don't even need a detonator, just a simple whack triggers it just fine. I have a collection of little green army men. It's at over 200, including boats, tanks, helicopters, barracks, and, standing atop the barracks, my favorite soldier. I named him John after my grandfather. Everyone tells me that it's stupid. No one has collections like this anymore. Why not just collect sneakers or video games? But I'm not interested in those. My grandfather gave me this set, and it means everything to me. He said it reminded him of his time in Korea. I loved my grandfather. He was the only person who ever really understood me. When he died, it was like I lost my best friend. My mom and dad had split up a couple of years before, but that was okay. I had my granddad. Recently, Mom married a guy named Roger. I guess he was okay. He was nice to me and never tried to act like my dad. But he had a son, Mikey, who moved in with us after they got married. Mikey was a jerk. He would make fun of me, steal my stuff, kick me under the table. And whenever I complained, he'd just say I was making it up, and my mom would always believe him or tell me to let it go. I guess she was afraid of Roger leaving. I wish she'd cared more about me than she did about him. The one thing Mikey didn't mess with was my Army Men set. I guess Mom had told Roger how much it meant to me, and he'd told Mikey to stay away from it. But that didn't stop him from talking about messing with it. He'd always threatened to destroy it when I wasn't looking. One day, he got mad at me for something. I don't even remember what. And said he was going to beat me up when our parents weren't looking. I told my mom, but he said he was just joking, and she believed him. But every time she and Roger left the room, he gave me a glare that told me he meant it. I started locking my room at night, but he told Mom I was causing trouble, and she made me keep it open. One night I was lying in bed and I heard the door open. It was Mikey, and he was staring at me murderously with his fist raised. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. Then, in slow motion, a noise, like boots on dirt. John, standing, his rifle pointed at Mikey. Boom! Mikey on the ground, shocked, a gaping hole in his stomach. Silence. Mikey was never seen again after that. His body disappeared and was never found. I said I didn't know anything, and eventually people stopped asking me questions. But from that day forward, there was a new figure in the barracks, and John stood watch, his gun permanently trained on it. I loved my grandfather, and my grandfather loves me. Sadie's reflection in the bathroom mirror kept looking over her shoulder. It had been happening for a week now. At first, it didn't really register with Sadie. While brushing her teeth, it seemed like her eyes in the mirror randomly flicked sideways. It was like a flicker of the TV during a lightning storm, so fast you could easily convince yourself it never happened. She shrugged it off, but it kept happening. A couple nights later, Sadie was washing her face before bed. After bending down to scrub the last of the soap off, she looked at herself and found her eyes weren't looking back at her, but over her shoulder. Her mirror image's face crinkled slightly in worry. Shocked by this incongruity, Sadie flipped off the lights and dashed into bed. After a week of avoiding her mirror, Sadie managed to convince herself it was all in her head. There was no possible way a reflection could look somewhere else independently of its creator. She shook her head, walked into her bathroom, and began her nightly routine. After rinsing her mouth, she looked again at her reflection and noticed a stark difference. Her mirror twin was looking directly over her shoulder with the starkest face of terror Sadie had ever seen. She whipped around to see what the mirror was warning her of. Nothing. All she could see was the doorway and her bedroom beyond. Until she heard a cruel, crackling chuckle from behind her and cold, glassy hands closing around her throat. Millions of people claim to have seen the moon blink, as if the rocky sphere possessed an eyelid the size of a celestial body. I missed it. I was asleep. But my aunt and uncle, a couple of my friends and their family, all swear by the event's reality. I don't necessarily know if I believe it, but why would so many lie? People from France, China, Indiana, Colombia, Ottawa, and every corner of the globe all claim that it happened. Surely it's just a trend, a call for attention, a fad. People stare at the moon all night, waiting to see if it blinks. Religious fanatics attempt to explain how this fits into their God's story. The news, the politicians, the actors, the singers seem to shift their focus on this fascination with the moon. I grew sick of every channel reporting on or referencing the moon. Social media, full of live streams and testimonies on the moon. T-shirts, mugs, iMoon propaganda, and bickering between non-believers and believers online. The global obsession with the eye in the sky deterred all progress on Earth. The moon occupied our thoughts and efforts as people starved. Cartels continued their peddling of drugs and slaves. The world rotted more and more as the average Samaritan fanaticized over the moon. As every facet of society de-evolved due to this distraction caused by the moon, I began to question this new world it has created. Does it matter if the moon blinks? Who cares? Why would time be sacrificed for such a futile thing? I guess it would be strange, unexplainable, quite extraordinary if the moon blinked, but what are we to do about it? Give it eye drops? Why care about a blinking moon while people freeze without homes, wars start over beliefs, and children are sold as property? When people are jailed for thoughts, murdered for candidness, and punished for innocence, does it matter if the moon blinks?